As a child, I was sent to the Xia household as a child bride for that spoiled young master. He pointed his finger at my nose, cursing me as an ugly woman, even running away from home to break off the engagement. Later, when the Xia family fell on hard times, the young master grew silent and withdrawn, spending his days plotting revenge. When he wasn't looking, I sold myself into the prince's mansion for 2 taels of silver. Before I left, his eyes reddened as he reluctantly stroked the small mole behind my ear. "Wan Yu, when this is all over, I will marry you." For those words, I endured 10 years of hardship in the prince's mansion, finally waiting for the fall of Prince Shi. Yet he married another. Xia Huijin sneered at me, "I find you filthy." He never knew I never intended to marry him. The physician declared my chronic ailment terminal, beyond cure. When Xia Huijin's wedding day arrives, I shall depart for Jiangnan with Bai Tan. I heard that when Prince Shi fell from power, Zhuang Wani played a significant role in the intrigues. After living all those years in the Prince Shi mansion, a place that devoured people, and with the prince's peculiar tastes, who could believe she remained pure and untouched? How could Prince Shenyang dare to marry such a woman? Upon arriving at the Ministry of Revenue residence, I saw several young ladies crowding around Xuaningji, their glances filled with contempt and disdain. I stood silently in place. Zhuang Wani is me. Xuaningji is the youngest daughter of the Ministry of Revenue. Just the other day, I saw her smiling brightly as she strolled through the Lantern Festival with Xia Huijin. She abandoned Xia Huijin and secretly followed me. Xuaningji is the only daughter of Minister Xue, with 2 elder brothers above her. A pampered noblewoman since childhood, she appraised me with a glance that flashed with confidence and contempt. "You're old and ugly, and so fierce. Xia Huijin wouldn't like someone like you. Who in the capital doesn't know you, Zhuang Wani, are merely his tool? How shameless of you to even dream of becoming a princess consort. You should know your place. Don't be so deluded about how much you mean to brother Huijin." I frowned. "What business is it of yours?" Xuaningji curved her lips, her gaze piercingly direct. "Xia Huijin doesn't love you. If he truly cared, how could he have sent you to that monstrous Shi prince's mansion? You and he have no parental decree, no arranged match. When your family fell on hard times, it was only the Xia family's kindness that took you in, one more mouth to feed. Now you wish to repay kindness with betrayal?" I drew the dagger I carried and waved it, fixing her with a cold stare. "Let Xia Huijin come tell me that himself." Xuaningji paled. Coincidentally, Xia Huijin had come searching for her nearby. He was instructing his guards to look carefully. Ning is timid and usually very well behaved. She shouldn't have gone far. Xuaningji flashed me a triumphant smile before turning and running off, lifting her skirt as she called Xia Huijin's name. At the alley entrance, I watched Xia Huijin gently tap Xuaningji's nose. Her face flushed as she murmured, "I saw sugar figurines being sold over there and somehow lost you." "Please don't be angry." Xia Huijin raised an eyebrow, brushing aside the slightly disheveled strands of hair at Xuaningji's forehead. As his fingertip brushed past her ear, he gently touched it and spoke softly, "Don't wander off next time." My heart fluttered slightly. I stared blankly at Xia Huijin's thin lips, feeling somewhat dazed. I raised my hand and touched the scar behind my ear. There, once, had been a mole. I had lived at the Xia residence for 5 years. After the Xia family was confiscated, Xia Huijin and I clung to each other for another 2 years. During those 2 years, what he cherished most was the red mole behind my ear. Xia Huijin had been accustomed to a life of luxury since childhood. Suddenly stripped of his parents' protection, he had little silver to his name. In winter, we huddled together for warmth in a dilapidated temple. He draped his only cloak over me, his own lips turning white with cold. I tried to give the cloak back, but Xia Huijin shook his head, his fingertip gently tracing behind my ear. "Wani, you're all I have left. Even if something happens to me, I'll make sure you live on." Usually, he spoke harshly to me, never revealing a shred of vulnerability, his mind set only on driving me away. My heart skipped a beat as I let him gently pinch the small mole behind my ear, stroke by stroke. Because of his words, I feared that if anything happened to me, it would strip Xia Huijin of his reason to live. Alas, in my first year at the prince's mansion, I took a blade meant for the consort of Prince Shi. A long scar now runs from my right ear down my neck. Xuaningji got one thing wrong. It wasn't Xia Huijin who sent me to that place of torment, I chose to go myself. Nor was it that he disliked me as I am. What he cherished was the memory of her that lived on in his mind. The radiant and graceful Jiangnan scholar beauty, Zhuang Wanyi. The year the Zhuang family fell, I had just turned 8 when an old servant led me by the hand into the Xia residence. It was my first time at the Xia household, clad in mourning robes, white hairpins in my hair, eyes lowered, not uttering a word. Madame Xia and my mother were close friends. I studied her discreetly. Her hair was piled high, radiating a quiet authority, the polar opposite of my gentle mother. Yet the moment she saw me, tears fell. She took my hand through the gate, forcing Xia Huijin to kneel in the ancestral hall and swear he would treat me well. Xia Huijin nearly knocked over the ancestral tablets in fury and stormed out of the house for 2 days. If you want to marry her, go ahead. I'm not marrying her. Why should I marry some ugly girl I've never even seen? Back then, I had just lost my parents. I certainly wasn't pretty, pale and gaunt, skinny as a rail, perhaps even with a hint of death in my eyes. Hearing Xia Huijin's words, I didn't even blink. If none of the Zhuang family's relatives had been willing to take this hot potato, my mother-in-law wouldn't have gritted her teeth and brought me to the Xia residence. After all, the childhood betrothal was just a joke between my mother and Lady Xia back then. Taking it seriously felt like taking advantage of someone else. Madame Xia, furious at his words, ignored him and pulled me along to see the room and maidservant she had prepared for me. I kept my head bowed, saying nothing. Madame Xia showed no impatience, merely gazing at me thoughtfully, her eyes brimming with tears. You bear such a striking resemblance to your mother. Wanyi, your mother and I were as close as sisters. Consider me your aunt. As for Xia Huijin's temperament, I wonder whom he takes after. It's rather peculiar. Rest assured, if he proves unwilling, I shall find you a good family in time. You shall never suffer hardship. I lifted my head in silence, unsure whether Lady Xia's words were sincere or not. My father died suddenly of illness. My mother wept herself to death within months, joining him in death. Now I live in the Xia household. If Xia Huijin were to drive me away, Mrs. Xia would surely favor her own son in the long run. I couldn't eat or sleep in peace. Almost every day, I inquired if Xia Huijin had returned. I secretly took the osmanthus cake delivered by the maid and hid furtively at the mansion gate for several days straight. Until Xia Huijin had stayed long enough at his uncle's house. He leapt down from the carriage with a swagger, rolled his eyes the moment he saw me. I grabbed his sleeve, curved my lips, revealed the osmanthus cake in my embrace, and spoke earnestly. Xia Huijin, I won't marry you. You may have it. Henceforth, I shall regard you as my elder brother, and Lady Xia as my aunt. The Zhu family is a scholarly lineage, and my mother is a renowned woman of letters. I've known poetry and books since childhood and understand reason. A forced marriage brings no sweetness. Xia Huijin was full of youthful vigor and arrogance, always playing with that girl from the prefect's family who dreamed of becoming a heroine. He wouldn't like someone like me. Hearing my words, Xia Huijin unexpectedly stopped in his tracks, as if trying to discern how much truth lay in my statement. Finally, he snorted in disdain. You'd better mean what you say. The next day, when Xia Huijin saw me at the dinner table, he sat down quietly without a word. Madame Xia and the maid behind her exchanged a knowing glance. Huijin's temperament was unpredictable, and when he got angry, he was as stubborn as a mule. Why had he changed his ways today? Xia Huijin remained silent, his newly smoothed hair beginning to bristle again. I quickly stepped in to smooth things over. Mother said the lady and she were as close as sisters. Since Wanyi had come to the Xia residence, she naturally regarded the lady as her own mother and Huijin as her elder brother. How could an elder brother be angry with his younger sister? As the words fell, Lady Xia tenderly pulled me into her embrace. Xia Huijin muttered under his breath, so you're showing off? When I first entered the Xia household, I was cautious in every way, trying my best to hide my inner timidity and fear. I dreaded displeasing Lady Xia and Xia Huijin, lest they drive me away. Lady Xia seemed to sense my unease. But she said nothing. Like my own mother, she taught me poetry, literature, etiquette, and the ways of the inner quarters. Under her guidance, by the age of 11, I was already assisting with the Xia family's business affairs. Life under someone else's roof inevitably brought worries. It was hard for a woman in this world, so I threw myself into learning everything I could. Madame Xia often took me to banquets at other noble households, building my reputation as a talented young scholar. Whenever some lady showed signs of favor, Madame Xia would sigh, saying that if Xia Huajin weren't blind, he would have seen my worth by now. Whenever I heard such remarks, I would hastily change the subject. As Xia Huajin grew older, he became increasingly inscrutable, spending his days away on unknown errands. Yet whenever I lingered late at the shop, he would inevitably wait outside in his carriage, his brow furrowed. "Why so late again? Don't you know the city is unsettled? A woman of your age should have returned home long ago. What if something happened to you out here? If not for mother's worries, I would have slept long ago." I murmured my apology. Xia Huajin helped me into the carriage. Rising after sitting so long, I felt a sudden wave of dizziness and leaned sideways. His thin lips brushed my earlobe. Xia Huajin's face flushed crimson, yet his words remained sharp. "Why so delicate? Might as well change your name to Zhuang Jiao." After this happened several times, I hesitated before telling the lady not to have Xia Huajin wait for me anymore. She looked at me in surprise, smiling brightly as she said she had only called the guards and never summoned Xia Huajin. Lady Xia took my hand again. "Wan Yi, the magistrate sent word 2 days ago. If you'd agreed to be my daughter-in-law, I'd have refused him. Rest assured, I won't trouble you. If Xia Huajin has no feelings for you, I won't force you into a loveless union." My face flushed as I nodded beneath her expectant gaze. Madame Xia treated me exceptionally well, like her own daughter. Later, Xia Huajin sought me out, his ears flushed, and handed me a bracelet. I recognized it had been on Lady Xia's wrist. He said that when I came of age, we would marry, and he would become my husband. I had believed I would spend my entire life in the Xia household. Married to Xia Huajin, a man of few words, yet one who loved and respected me. With a mother-in-law like Madame Xia, life would be easy and content. But I never imagined that when Xia Huajin turned 15, disaster would strike the Xia family. Overnight, only Xia Huajin and I remained of the entire household. An old servant of the Xia household dressed his grandson in Xia Huajin's clothes. While fleeing, the boy fell into the river. Only after the soldiers saw him drown did they spare the old man. Amidst the bloodshed, Xia Huajin's white robes were stained crimson. His eyes cold, he told me to leave. "You are not of the Xia family. You have the means to survive and the reputation of a talented scholar. You can live well elsewhere." I had never witnessed such a scene and stood frozen for a long moment. The sky collapsed too swiftly. In an instant, everything from the past dissolved into nothingness. I only recall Lady Xia, her hairpin askew, eyes reddened, mouthing words. She said, "Run." That day, I followed Xia Huajin in a daze, clutching his sleeve tightly. Hearing those words, I snapped out of my stupor and muttered, "I won't." Xia Huajin firmly believed the Xia family's case was a gross miscarriage of justice. They ran their business honestly, how could they be involved in smuggling salt or maintaining private armies? Clearing the Xia family's name became his obsession. He sought out numerous officials, but each attempt was rebuffed. I spent 2 years accompanying him through this struggle. During those 2 years, he treated me coldly, even injuring my leg to force me away. Biting back the excruciating pain in my leg, I limped along with him to the capital. The day I saw Xia Huajin, I clung to him, refusing to let go, sobbing uncontrollably. "Xia Huajin, you're all I have left." His grip on my arm finally loosened, allowing me to stay by his side. 2 years later, while Xia Huajin and I were out buying medicine, we encountered the steward of the Prince Shi's mansion purchasing people from a slave dealer. Xia Huajin stared intently inside, his eyes burning with hatred, yet his tone was uncharacteristically gentle. "Wani, I'm about to do something very dangerous. Promise me you'll return to Jiangnan and wait for me, okay? My father had a friend who runs a bookstore. Go to him. I'll write a letter asking him to take care of you. If you meet someone you like, don't wait for me. You're so clever, you'll thrive anywhere. I remained silent. After speaking, Xia Huaijin walked away on his own. I heard him ask the man how to get work at the prince's mansion, but the man said he'd only hire him if he became eunuch. Xia Huaijin stiffened, saying he needed to settle his sister first and asking them to wait. I hid in the shadows. After he left, I sold myself into the prince's mansion for 2 taels of silver. When Xia Huaijin found me again, I had become a maid in the mansion. He clenched my hand in anger, his eyes red. I smiled indifferently. Don't worry. I'm clever enough to thrive anywhere. You had to undergo castration to enter the prince's mansion, but I needed nothing, just a pleasing appearance. Having learned business from the lady since childhood, this venture was a sure profit. Xia Huaijin clenched my hand, tears glistening in his eyes as he gritted out, in this lifetime, Xia Huaijin will only marry Zhuang Wan. If you die, I shall not live alone. But later, I helped him overturn his conviction and bring down Prince Shi. Watching me, covered in battle scars after fighting others, the curve of his lips finally tightened. That night, Xia Huaijin held me as we lay on his bed, doing nothing. Only after he thought I'd fallen asleep did he whisper softly, "Wani, I still prefer the you from back then." I never knew how to handle such matters. No one ever taught me. So I lay on the bed, eyes closed, pretending to sleep, pretending I'd never heard those words. After leaving the banquet, I returned to the Prince of Xuanyang's residence. One courtyard there was arranged for me by Xia Huaijin. Light rain fell from the sky. I hadn't taken an umbrella when I returned, and the maidservant had prepared hot water. A sharp pain gripped my chest, as if my organs were being twisted together, unbearably agonizing. When Xia Huaijin entered, I had just extinguished the lamp, curled up on the bed wearing only a thin nightgown. Until he roughly flipped me over. "I hear you visited the Minister of Right's residence today?" Xia Huaijin's tone was icy, laced with accusation and irritation. I remained silent, cold sweat trickling down my forehead. He paused, then spoke calmly, "Visit less often henceforth. The Prince of Shi has only recently fallen. Are you not afraid of what others might say?" Gritting my teeth against the agony, I managed a faint nod. Xia Huaijin seemed to sense something. His scorching palm touched my forehead, his breath brushing my ear. "You're running a fever. I'll fetch the physician." "It's useless. Even if the physician comes, it won't help." I reached out and pulled him close. "It's nothing. Just my period." Xia Huaijin didn't mention the physician again. Instead, he lay down behind me and embraced me from behind. "You're no longer a young girl. Why so delicate?" Back in the Prince Shi's mansion, weren't the life-threatening matters far more painful than this? In the darkness, I couldn't make out Xia Huaijin's features, only hearing his voice tinged with playful teasing. But I couldn't muster a smile. I hadn't seen Xia Huaijin for a month. For that entire month, he had been by Xuanningji's side. Stealing my resolve, I whispered, "Xia Huaijin, I saw her. She's beautiful." Xia Huaijin fell silent for a long moment. "She'd make a fine consort for you." His arms tightened around me suddenly, and a sharp pain shot through my chest. Xia Huaijin's voice carried anger. His lips pressed together, his eyes clouded with icy frost, and a flicker of displeasure immediately spread across his face. "Trying to keep me away from aiming this way? Wani, all these years in the Prince Shi's mansion, you haven't learned much else, but your scheming has grown far deeper than before. Didn't you always want to marry me? You've been scheming against me since the day the Prince of Shi fell. Zhuang Wani, you're quite the schemer." My mouth opened, a stinging ache welling in my eyes. Gazing into his eyes filled with disgust, time seemed to freeze. Suddenly, I remembered. In my second year at the Prince Shi mansion, I had helped the princess consort eliminate a concubine vying for favor. Enraged, the Prince Shi ordered me flogged 20 times. I burned for 3 days and nights. The steward said he would call my brother to collect my body. Back then, Xia Huaijin stood trembling outside the door, asking how I was. I gritted my teeth and replied, "I'm fine." The moment the words left my mouth, Xia Huaijin pushed open the door. Seeing me lying half dead on the bed, his eyes darkened. He sat beside my bed and reached out to touch my forehead. My eyes were half closed, unable to discern his expression. I only mumbled, "Leave quickly. Don't let anyone see me like this." Xia Huijin lifted me up, his voice gritted with fury. "Zhuang. Wan. Yi. Are you a fool? Burning like this and still trying to endure alone? Do you want me to feel guilty for the rest of my life?" Xia Huijin pulled back the quilt and hoisted me onto his back. My mind was hazy, and his words caught me off guard, making tears spill unexpectedly. He seemed flustered, his voice soft and gentle. "Wani, I won't scold you anymore. Don't fall asleep. I didn't mean it that way. Please don't sleep, okay?" Tears fell uncontrollably as I sniffled softly. "Xia Huijin, I wish you'd scold me like before, tell me to get out of the Xia family." And Madame Xia, the shopkeepers, Sister Chen Hua and Hua Hua. Madame Xia took me to the poetry gathering. They were such kind people, why did it have to be them? I clung to Xia Huijin's back, sobbing uncontrollably. Later, he dragged me to the clinic. I heard him plead with the doctor to heal me. That night, he held the medicine and stayed by my side, watching me all night long. When I opened my eyes the next morning, I was startled by the bloodshot veins in Xia Huijin's eyes. His eyes flickered with sorrow, guilt, and a hint of ferocity. "Wani, if it weren't for me, you wouldn't have to endure this." I shook my head. Lady Xia was my aunt, but she was also my mother. I owed the Xia family a debt of gratitude. Repaying it now was only right. With no other kin left in this world, Xia Huijin was my only family, my brother. We tacitly avoided mentioning marriage. In those dark, hopeless days, love was the least significant thing. For the first 5 years, Xia Huijin and I met only once every few months. Each time, we talked through the night. We shared amusing stories, discussed important matters. At the end of every visit, he would always remind me, "Wani, wait for me." I waited year after year in the Prince Shi's mansion. Finally, 3 years ago, Xia Huijin seized an opportunity and entered the service of Minister Shui. Minister Shui belonged to the Crown Prince's faction, which was fundamentally opposed to the Prince Shi's faction. I never asked him about the hardships he endured, nor did he ask me how difficult life had been at the Prince Shi's residence. The Crown Prince had planted several spies within the Prince Shi's residence. After they were discovered, I was the only one left. To avoid suspicion, Xia Huijin and I communicated through secret signals hidden in food deliveries. We never met again for 3 years. I risked my life countless times. After delivering the crucial evidence, Xia Huijin arrived with his men to quell the rebellion. He warned me beforehand, "I'll arrange for someone to escort you away. You'll assume a new identity and return to the capital. Become my wife." My heart swelled with joy, and I agreed with a smile. How could I not be delighted to finally leave the Prince Shi's residence? As long as I remained there, I was at their mercy, a fish on the chopping block. From the moment I entered, I had no choice. Either the Xia family's wrongs would be avenged, or I would die. After enduring so much, I didn't even notice the complex expression on Xia Huijin's face at the time. But when the manor was being seized, as I tried to slip out the side gate, my old ailment suddenly flared up. I collapsed against the wall. Xia Huijin looked panicked, instinctively reaching to support me. "Wani!" Many had witnessed it, so he couldn't gloss it over. That day, I hadn't deliberately exposed our relationship to everyone, I was simply ill. An illness rooted in the Prince Shi's mansion. The moment he heard Prince Shi's mansion, Xia Huijin cut me off impatiently. "Wani, I've told you, never mention you're from Prince Shi's mansion again. If trouble arises, even I won't be able to protect you." I stared at him blankly. I couldn't understand why his attitude had changed so drastically. After 3 years apart, he seemed like a completely different person. Xia Huijin, clad in brocade robes, still possessed that handsome face, sitting proudly and nobly atop his horse. He paused, softening his voice as he patiently coaxed. "Wani, your status prevents you from becoming a princess consort. Moreover, you won't be the only one in the mansion from now on. Be good. I'll protect you for a lifetime. As long as I'm here, they won't dare harm you. We can still be like we were before. Rest well now. Don't speak of this anymore." The maidservant told me joyfully that Xia Huijin has ordered them to address me as Lady Yu from now on. He sent numerous fine gifts. He said that before the princess consort enters the mansion, it is inappropriate for concubines or mistresses to be present. The matter of official recognition may have to wait, but he won't treat me unfairly. These gifts are the best proof of that. A sigh escaped me inwardly. Precious treasures may be sought, but a loving husband is hard to find. Xia Huijin and Xuaningji's wedding day was set for next month. With the joyous occasion at the prince's mansion drawing numerous guests, it seemed a fitting time to depart. Xia Huijin played a pivotal role in suppressing Prince Shi's rebellion. His Majesty enfeoffed him as a prince of another surname and granted him one request. He directly petitioned the emperor to issue an edict allowing him to marry Xuaningji. Xia Huijin said that once the mansion had a proper mistress, taking me as a concubine would pose no problem. This is truly wonderful news. Would the lady care to visit the prince today? I shook my head. Take whatever you like from these. If Xia Huijin asks, just say I gave them to you. The maids instantly fell silent, glancing at me nervously. I paused, then curved my lips slightly, choosing not to trouble them. I had once been a servant myself and nearly forgot. They naturally worried. Taking their master's things without permission could lead to punishment if Xia Huijin later reprimanded them. I called for someone to help me out into the courtyard to bask in the sun. Outside, people bustled about making preparations. Standing there, it felt like I'd been caught in a grand dream. When I was 13, the Xia household fell into decline. My heart ached for Xia Huijin's plight. I felt both affection and gratitude. Even when I learned he intended to undergo castration to enter the prince's household, I was prepared. No matter what he became, he would always be my Xia Huijin. But I could never accept his betrayal. When Xuaningji came calling, I had just finished a bowl of medicine. The room was filled with gifts bestowed by Xia Huijin. The maid who delivered the message said Xia Huijin had left a note. The prince said he hoped you and Miss Xue would get along well, as you would all be family in the future. I paused, saying nothing. The moment Xuaningji entered the room, she sat down opposite me. She fiddled with the cup in her hand before slamming it hard onto the table. You knew the Prince of Shenyang before I did, and there was that betrothal, right? I know about your relationship and never intended to tear you apart. But during your 3 years at the Prince Shi's residence, it was I who stayed by Xia Huijin's side, helping him emerge from his darkness. Our bond runs far deeper than any debt of gratitude owed to you. She efficiently ordered the Prince Xuanyang's maidservant to prepare lunch, selecting many of Xia Huijin's favorite dishes with the ease of a longtime mistress of the house. Such tricks, I've seen plenty of them at the Prince Shi's residence. Yet the restlessness in my heart remains unavoidable. I think I understand now why Xia Huijin seemed to change so suddenly. It turns out these past 3 years, he had already found someone he cherished. While I lived in constant fear at the Prince Shi's residence, worrying if I might be the next corpse, Xia Huijin was likely playing with Xuaningji. My mind grew hazy, a numb confusion settling over me. If Xuaningji was his love, why had Xia Huijin made those promises to me when I left the Prince Shi's residence? A sharp pain pierced my chest without warning, its threads twisting and tangling around my heart. Suppressing the bitterness in my heart, I stood up and looked at Xuaningji. Since you know it's a debt of gratitude, you and your husband should be thinking about how to repay it, not forcing me to stay in the mansion as a concubine. Xuaningji gave a cold laugh. Your refusal matters little. I enter this mansion as the princess consort. We'll have plenty of time to get acquainted. I'm telling you this now only to urge you to leave quickly and sensibly, so the gossip outside doesn't affect me and the prince. Even as a concubine of the Prince of Shenyang, an elder from the Prince of Shi's household would still drag the prince into public scrutiny. Xuaningji's words faded into the wind. That night, Xia Huijin returned to the mansion. Under the full moon, he came to my chamber. A ripple stirred in his usually placid eyes. Visibly pleased, Xia Huijin drew closer and embraced me. Wan Yi, these past days have seen the remnants of Prince Shi's faction thoroughly dealt with. His Majesty has proclaimed it to the realm, exonerating the Xia family. Soon, Prince Shi will be beheaded as a warning to all. These 3 years. I've missed you so much. Had I just emerged from Prince Shi's residence, hearing these words would have filled me with wild joy. Hadn't Xia Huijin and I striven for 10 years precisely for this day? Yet now, something felt different. I gazed calmly at Xia Huijin, my fingers tracing his cheek. He flinched instinctively, then relaxed as he realized what was happening, letting me linger on his face. Xia Huijin, how have you fared these past 3 years? Xia Huijin's body stiffened momentarily before his voice drifted down from above me, calm yet tinged with a hint of pleasure. As if recalling that person had made him smile involuntarily. It's been fine. Each day, I search for evidence of the Prince of Shi's rebellion and navigate the treacherous affairs of the court. In my spare moments, I still remember our days at the Xia residence. Wani, wait just a little longer. It's only a matter of months. With me watching over the estate, no one will ever look down on you again. I promised you I would marry you. Promise me, will you take me as your concubine? I suppressed the dull ache in my heart. What about Xuaningji? Those 3 years, you were always together. Xia Huijin fell silent for a long moment, his expression unnatural. Wani, I missed you terribly during your absence. Sometimes I wonder, if only you hadn't gone to the Prince Shi's mansion. We could have cleared our names another way, lived out our days peacefully like ordinary people. Having come this far, I'm no longer in control of my own fate. For the rest of our days, don't leave me alone again. Xia Huijin's gaze drifted into the distance, as if lost in some distant memory. I pulled away from his embrace, my eyes calm. If I hadn't gone, you would have. The man I once thought of day and night now lay beside him, and I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. The imperial decree for his marriage to Xuaningji was something he personally petitioned for. Was this what he meant by having no choice? I turned away, refusing to look at him. These past days, I've thought a great deal. I spent 5 years as the Xia family's child bride, then 10 more as the jade maiden of the Prince of Xuanyang's mansion. Madame Xia raised me with the care of a daughter, and Bai Tan was like a sister to me. I stared blankly at this room, unchanged from years past. Madame Xia's words still echoed in my ears. She said, Wani, never settle for less. I raised you not to be my daughter-in-law. You were never meant to become a noble lady, nor to be anyone's bride. If fate brings you and Xia Huijin together, that would be best. But if not, I only wish for you to be one among thousands, to be yourself. The physician declared my ailment incurable, a chronic condition beyond remedy. I have only a few years left to live. In the time I have remaining, I wish to be Zhuang Wanyi. But leaving is no easy matter. Ever since Prince Shi's downfall, Xia Huijin has had people guard me. I am never allowed to leave the estate lightly, and even going out requires several attendants. Not only that, Xia Huijin had all my clothes replaced and the room's furnishings changed. Now my room mirrors the one I had in the Xia household so perfectly that even I sometimes feel disoriented, wondering if I've slipped back into the past. That day, Xia Huijin came to see me again. This is well. I lifted my gaze, catching the lingering nostalgia in Xia Huijin's eyes. He had my plain robes taken away and specially ordered the vibrant garments I once wore in the Xia household. But the woman in the mirror bore eyes heavy with the weight of years, no longer the Zhuang Wanyi of old. Dressed in such finery, I could only feel utterly ridiculous. Xia Huijin took my hand, but I slipped it away without a trace. Xia Huijin, I want to see Bai Tan. The smile faded from Xia Huijin's face. He pressed his lips together, staring into my eyes as he stubbornly held my hand. Wani, I told you, stop associating with those unsavory people. You shouldn't be like this now. Bai Tan is my friend from the Prince Shi's residence. Xia Huijin had always disapproved of my association with her. Before, I didn't want to trouble him. But now, I lifted my gaze and answered him earnestly. Bai Tan isn't a disreputable person. She runs a shop at the street corner. I spent 10 years in the Prince Shi's mansion, there's no need to deny it. Even if I donned my former bright robes and lived in the same courtyard, I am not the Zhuang Wanyi of the past. Xia Huijin seemed stung, a strange expression crossing his brow as he stared at me with mockery. Prince Shi has always taken pleasure in tormenting the concubines and maids in his mansion, even going so far as to bring in young girls from the common folk. What good could this Bai Tan you speak of possibly be? Does becoming a respectable woman erase everything from the past? A dense, stabbing pain surged in my chest, sending a chill down my spine. Was the Xia Huaijin before me still the same man I knew? I stared back at him stubbornly. If I became the Prince of Xuanyang's concubine, I would naturally cease all contact with Bai Tan. Not many days left, Xia Huaijin. Guards suddenly reported that Xuaningji had come looking for him. Xia Huaijin's expression shifted slightly as he turned away coldly. Go if you must. But never again act so recklessly. After all, there aren't many days left. I paid him no further mind. Nor did I tell Xia Huaijin that I would never be his concubine. Even now, I must hold on to the pride I once possessed. Bai Tan had opened a sweet soup shop, her hands had always been deft. When I arrived, she was wrapped in a face mask, smiling brightly as she prepared osmanthus sweet soup for a customer. She glanced at me, surprise flashing in her eyes before giving way to worry. Wani, why are you here? I smiled. I came to see you. Bai Tan was my only friend in the capital. I wanted to see her. Bai Tan sighed, seemingly unsurprised by my appearance. She closed the shop, led me to the back courtyard, and removed her face veil. A long scar stretched across her right cheek. I looked at her with a pang of sorrow. Bai Tan smiled indifferently. It's nothing. Compared to them, I'm much better off. But you, how have you been these days at the Prince of Xuanyang's mansion? I pressed my lips together. It's been passable. The Prince of Xi is very particular about women and dislikes any scars on them. Bai Tan was tall and pleasing to the eye. Back then, she served alongside me in the princess consort's quarters. Unlike me, she had once been the princess consort Xi's secret guard. Were it not for her face, she likely would have become the prince's concubine long ago. As for me, I had shielded the princess consort from a blade early on, leaving an unsightly scar behind my ear. We were outsiders in the household, sheltered from the prince's gaze, living quietly within the princess consort's quarters. All those years, when I lay feverish, beaten by the prince, punished by the princess consort, even when I smuggled out evidence of the prince's crimes, Bai Tan was always by my side. We servants lived differently from our masters. Each day brought fear, each moment the dread that we might be the next to die. Bai Tan never allowed me to speak of these things to others. I did these things not for you, but for myself. Being a secret guard was harder than being a maid, but Bai Tan said that compared to being sent by Prince Xi to the mansions of ministers to be humiliated and toyed with while gathering intelligence, serving as a secret guard beside the prince's consort was still better. But only just barely. When I first began serving the princess, it was Bai Tan who pushed me forward to shield her from a blade. That scar she bore saved my life. When I asked why she helped me, she coldly replied, "When have I ever helped you? In this place that devours its own, if you don't fight for yourself, becoming just another corpse in the mountain of corpses is only a matter of time." I'd only been at the prince's residence a few months then. Her words sent a chill down my spine. Later, when insomnia kept me tossing and turning, I'd crawl into Bai Tan's bed and talk to her. Maids weren't allowed to light lamps at night. Bai Tan couldn't sleep either, so we spoke in the dark. She said she'd long forgotten her original name, where her home was, who her parents were. She was a completely different person from the obedient, composed Bai Tan of daytime, who only knew how to follow orders. Her eyes were deep and sorrowful, and she sighed uncontrollably. Having lived in the Prince Xi's mansion for so many years, though I had never studied books, I knew that what they were doing was wrong. "Wani, you are different from us. You are pure and clean. You should never have come here." Having never seen the outside world, every word she spoke carried a longing. I shared stories of my childhood at home and my time after going to the Xia family, and Bai Tan listened, utterly captivated. Finally, she spoke softly. "Wani, I don't want to live like this anymore." We all knew what she meant. Working for the Prince of Xi and the Princess Consort, the lives on her hands were too many to count. When Prince Xi's cloying gaze fell upon me, I followed Bai Tan's advice, deliberately combing my hair up to expose the scar behind my ear. The sticky look in his eyes vanished, replaced only by disgust. Finding an excuse to beat me was one thing. Now, Bai Tan sat before me, seeming hesitant. "Have you told him about these matters?" I shook my head. After reuniting with Xia Huijin, I never mentioned anything about the Prince Shi's mansion. It wasn't that I didn't want to speak of it, but whenever the subject came up, he deliberately avoided it. He didn't want to hear it before, and now there's no need. In a month, I'll be leaving. I didn't want to keep it from Bai Tan. The bowl in her hand crashed to the floor, a cold glint flashing in her eyes. She knew everything about Xia Huijin and me. These past days, she must have heard about his impending marriage to Xuaningji. You endured all those years in the mansion for him. When you first entered the mansion, why didn't he tell you any of this? That ungrateful, treacherous wolf, you just let him bully you like this? My eyes darkened, but the bitterness in my heart slowly faded as I looked at my own rough palms. Bai Tan, I never understood why he acted this way either. Had I been 13, I might still ask him why he treated me this way. But now, at 23, Jiangnan is my home, not the Prince Shi's mansion, nor Pingyang Prefecture. I didn't tell Bai Tan my days were numbered. What good would it do to entangle myself with Xia Huijin again? How could life be the same with anyone else? Even if Xia Huijin regretted his actions and spoke of past affection, a mirror shattered remains shattered. No amount of clinging can restore it to its former state. A flicker passed through Bai Tan's eyes. After a long moment, she suddenly spoke. I spent my entire first half of life in the Prince Shi mansion. Besides you, only the master tending the stove in the small kitchen would chat with me. He taught me how to make this sweet soup. I've thought about it, if I could live an ordinary life, I'd open a sweet soup shop. But Wan Yi, a sweet soup shop could be anywhere. I'll walk with you. Bai Tan and I talked until nightfall. The Prince of Xuanyang's carriage stopped at her shop's door. A young girl working there nervously ran over to tell her. Bai Tan replied coldly, "Let him wait." I smiled, knowing she was speaking for me. We'd said all there was to say. Bai Tan sighed. True, there would be plenty of time later. I paused, nodding slightly. When I saw Xia Huijin sitting before the carriage, I stopped in my tracks. Time seemed to rewind a decade. Xia Huijin unfastened his cloak and draped it over me. His chin rested against my forehead, his voice hoarse. Wani, I've come to take you home. I didn't take his hand. After bidding Bai Tan farewell, I climbed into the carriage on my own. Xia Huijin's eyes darkened, but he said nothing more. Seated inside, I caught the scent of powder and perfume lingering on the cloak. Only after returning did I learn Xia Huijin had accompanied Xuaningji on a spring outing that day. The next day, Xuaningji arrived at the Shenyang prince's residence with reddened eyes, seeking Xia Huijin. She wore a crimson gown, her hands seemingly clutching something. I glanced at her, about to turn away. But Xuaningji called out to me, her voice thick with venomous threat. Just you wait until I enter the Shenyang prince's residence. You'll pay for this. Are you feeling smug? The prince accompanied me on our outing, yet he still went out of his way to fetch you back to the residence. I frowned indifferently. Oh, whatever. Suit yourself. Xuaningji, accustomed to being fawned over, flew into a rage at my words. Such insolence. Servants, beat her. Her maid lunged forward, her hand raised to slap my face. My appetite had dwindled these past days, leaving me gaunt and sluggish. Just as the blow was about to land, a firm yet gentle hand intercepted it. Bai Tan seized the maid's wrist and flung her aside, her voice ringing out. How dare the daughter of the Minister of Revenue come to the Prince of Xuanyang's residence to bully people so brazenly? Xuaningji's face darkened instantly at this heavy accusation. Suddenly, she bit her lip, her expression turning aggrieved and accusatory. She was the one who blocked the path first. How dare an old servant of the Prince of Shi's residence show her face in public? Isn't this bringing shame upon the Prince of Shenyang? I merely wished to advise her against causing trouble for His Highness. What if it led to complications? I turned and indeed spotted Xia Huijin behind me. Such tactics seem overly childish to Bai Tan and me. Bai Tan offered Xuaningji no quarter, her voice dripping with scorn. Who knew Miss Xue could switch her face so quickly? Where did that aggressive attitude go? Finished putting on a show? After the act, I would take Wan Yi and leave. Xuaningji's face flushed crimson. Xia Huijin frowned. and Ning is the future princess consort of Shenyang. How dare you two be so disrespectful and arrogant? Apologize. Slap yourself 10 times. Xuaningji watched me with smug satisfaction. Xia Huijin approached, leaning close to whisper, she is, after all, the daughter of the Minister of Rights. If the Ministry of Rights makes a fuss, I doubt I could protect you. I know your temper, but Wani, for my sake, at least, try to endure it. Endure it? Haven't I endured 10 years already? I stared coldly at Xia Huijin, then raised my hand and struck him hard across the face. Xia Huijin, what you owe me is far more than this single slap. Today, you stand behind Xuaningji, so I'll smash it all back in your face. Let everyone see what ingratitude looks like. My chest ached again. I forced myself to look at Xia Huijin. Besides, do you even know what day today is? Xia Huijin froze in place. Xuaningji scowled as she rushed over. This is outrageous. Seize that insolent servant and flog her to death. The guards stood motionless. As members of the Prince of Xuanyang's household, they answered only to the prince's commands. Xia Huijin stepped forward to block Xuaningji, his voice deep and commanding. Escort Miss Xue back to her residence. With that, several guards and maids forcibly led Xuaningji away. Xia Huijin approached me with a stern expression, but I simply looked at him calmly and said, Your Highness, I shall take my leave first. Perhaps the detachment in my eyes was too obvious. As we passed, Xia Huijin seized my wrist, his back stiffening. Wani, we should pay our respects together. As we do every year. I cut him off. Not every year. Not these past 3 years, at least. I dared only seek a quiet spot at night to worship in secret, not even burning paper offerings. Madame Xia was your mother, but in my heart, she was also my mother. The Xia family were my family. Chunhua and Huahua grew up alongside us. They never betrayed us, even in death. That you and I stand here today is because of them. Over the past decade, I've reflected deeply and hold no blame against you. I've accepted the Xia family's kindness, and I must clear their name. But Xia Huijin, our marriage was but a childhood jest. You need not wed me out of gratitude, nor agonize between me and Xuanning out of guilt. You can move forward, while I remain trapped in the past, never having escaped. Xia Huijin's voice was heavy. Wani, it's not what you think. You have always been the one in my heart. Those words were infuriating. I sighed. I have matters to attend to. I must take my leave. With that, I departed with Bai Tan. The remnants of the Prince Shi's household, along with those who had destroyed the Xia family years ago, were to be executed today. Bai Tan and I, hooded, made our way to the execution grounds. A dense sea of figures filled the square. Many cried out their innocence, claiming their families were held hostage by the Prince of Shi, forcing them to obey his commands. Others seethed with indignation, cursing the entire court and the realm. But soon, heads began rolling one after another. I stared fixedly at the faces above, the man who took Lady Xia that night, the man who killed Chunhua, the men who abused the maidservants. I trembled all over. Bai Tan placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice gentle, shall we return first? I bit my lip and shook my head. Over the years, I often dreamt of that night. When I couldn't bear the pain in Prince Shi's mansion, Lady Xia's face would appear before me. Hatred fuels one's explosion, driving them forward. I dared not rest for a moment, waiting for this day. Only after the executions ended did I collapse, sitting limp on the ground, burying my face in my knees. Bai Tan patted my back, silently keeping watch beside me. After a long while, I wiped the tears from my face, parted ways with Bai Tan, and went alone to the city outskirts to burn paper offerings for the Xia family. Kneeling on the ground, I watched the paper offerings turn to ashes in the flames. In a daze, I thought I heard the echoing screams from the Xia residence once more. Madame Xia, Wani has come to see you. I've been unable to pay my respects for so long, but now justice is served. The Xia family's wrongs have been cleared, and Xia Huijin is now Prince of Shenyang. You can rest easy. Xia Huijin is to marry a beautiful young woman. Their children will surely be wise and lovely. Though Wani cannot be your daughter-in-law, she can be your daughter. Mother, soon we shall meet again. Wiping away my tears, I rose to my feet only to spot a figure nearby. Xia Huijin stood tall, clad in black. The youthful innocence and frivolity of his youth had vanished from his brow, replaced by a new, ruthless, and cold demeanor. His gaze fell upon me, softening slightly. Had I known you came to pay respects to Mother, why didn't you call me to join you? Mother, Juan and I are to be married soon. I've come to bring her home. It was still his voice, yet now it carried threads of affection. As if none of what had happened before ever occurred. I watched him silently. I thought I had made myself perfectly clear. Xia Huijin, we've been apart for 3 years. These 3 years, I lived in constant fear, fearing you might have died out there, fearing I might make a mistake. But now that I'm out, I'm not happy either. I don't want to enter your mansion and become Lady Yu. Pain flashed across Xia Huijin's face. Wani, do you mind that I'm getting married? Half the reason I overturned my conviction was thanks to Minister Shui and His Highness's recommendations. Now that I'm Prince Shenyang, I must marry Xuaningji. But you're the only one in my heart. I closed my eyes briefly. Xia Huijin, do you believe these words? Even if you do, let me tell you, these past 3 years, my heart has long since changed. Xia Huijin's eyes reddened, his voice catching in his throat. You're speaking out of anger, Wan Yi. We've weathered so many years together, why must we now walk separate paths? I shook my head, unwilling to say more. Xia Huijin let out a low laugh instead, his gaze piercing as he clenched his teeth. Too late. When the Xia family fell, I understood, without power, one can protect nothing. Now I hold power and influence. Even if you hate me, resent me, you must stay by my side. He seized my wrist and roughly pulled me into the carriage. A dull ache surged in my chest, followed by a thread-like pain radiating through my organs. Of all times, it had to be now. I couldn't make out what Xia Huijin said. Only a faint glimpse of his cold, thin smile, his eyes veiled in mist. Cold sweat beaded on my forehead. My eyelids grew heavy as I leaned against the carriage frame, muttering hoarsely, Xia Huijin. Grant me this final wish. When I opened my eyes again, the maid said Xia Huijin had already left. The court physician had examined me, stating only that my illness stemmed from years of accumulated exhaustion and that restful recuperation was now needed. I dragged myself out of bed, only for the maid to suddenly kneel before me. His Highness has ordered Lady Yu to remain within the courtyard. Do not leave the estate without cause. I sat silently upon the bed. Xia Huijin had effectively placed me under house arrest. After that, Xia Huijin never sought me out again. Instead, he devoted himself entirely to Xuaningji. They admired the moon together, painted together. Day after day, he stayed by Xuaningji's side. Night after night, he came to the door to glance at me. Wan Yi, wait a little longer. We'll be just like before. But I only felt sickened. All those years in the Prince Shi's residence, by Tan and I had many sisters. Yet over the decade, one by one, only the 2 of us remained. Before leaving the capital, unable to leave the mansion myself, I entrusted others to visit each of their families. I had graves erected for them in the mountains. Yet within the Prince of Xuanyang's mansion, I grew increasingly listless. I spent my days sitting in the courtyard, staring blankly at the world around me. Unnoticed, my frame grew noticeably thinner. Xia Huijin saw this and seemed to want to say something. His eyes held expectation, tinged with a hint of emotion and concern. Yet to me, it all seemed utterly strange. He and Xuaningji were so close, why the sudden change in demeanor now? I turned the pages of the book before me absent-mindedly as Xia Huijin sat beside me. These days must be tedious for you confined to the mansion. Why not let me take you out for a stroll? I shifted my gaze but offered no reply. Didn't you always love lively places? In 3 days, the Anping Prefecture will host a banquet. I'll take you along. Don't wander off. I'll have a maid follow you. Xia Huijin's voice was soft as he gently took my hand, rubbing it repeatedly. Then, habitually, he touched my right ear. When his fingers brushed a long scar, he paused, pain and regret flashing in his eyes. Wani, 3 years ago I told you, send someone else to the Prince Shi's residence. I'd find a way to get you out. If you'd agreed back then, how could I have suffered all this? Xia Huaijin looked terribly off. The corners of his eyes were reddened, his fists clenched tightly. I asked him, when did you ever say someone else would go to the Prince Shi's mansion? Those 3 years, I never saw him once. Even the letters he sent only contained instructions on what I should do. Xia Huaijin never once mentioned getting me out of the Prince Shi's mansion. Now, his dark eyes were sharp as blades, his tense jaw radiating hostility. Wan Yi, this marriage isn't as simple as you imagine. Settle in for now. We'll discuss matters later. With that, Xia Huaijin departed. Several days later, he brought me to the princess's residence. The mansion was imposing and magnificent in every detail. Following behind Xia Huaijin, I took my seat behind him. He leaned down to introduce the noble ladies present. I didn't listen very attentively. Having once served alongside the princess consort of Shi, I had long memorized their faces. Soon, I felt a piercing gaze upon me. Looking up, I saw Xuaningji had arrived unnoticed. She presented the jade sea pearl she'd brought to the princess, then performed a graceful curtsy. Her charm was charming yet perfectly proper. Banquets were rarely entertaining, especially mixed-gender gatherings like this. Princess Anping decided to spice things up by using a golden silk soft armor, a tribute from the western regions, as the prize for a flower petal game. Xuaningji approached Xia Huaijin with a radiant smile. Your Highness, why not join us? They were now the capital's most celebrated golden couple, destined to marry soon. Xia Huaijin naturally had no reason to refuse. He turned to instruct me, Wan Yi, I'll be back shortly. I had no desire to spend more time with him, so I merely nodded and let him go. Xuaningji's eyes, however, flashed with displeasure. What business does the prince have to explain himself so clearly to her? She's merely a maid, does she really think she's the master? Xia Huaijin frowned and whispered something in her ear. Only then did Xuaningji's expression soften, and she looked at me smugly. Before turning away, I caught the sharp gleam in her eyes, and an inexplicable unease washed over me. Until Xuaningji had someone summon me over. All around, eyes were fixed on the spectacle. Xia Huaijin's eyes darkened. Xuaningji arched an eyebrow, her voice sweet and delicate. I hear Prince Shi once delighted in collecting beauties, and every woman in his household possessed unique talents. Since the princess has hosted this banquet and we have nothing better to do, why not have Miss Zhuang dance for us? Might she surpass the court dancers? Beneath the wide sleeves, my hands clenched tightly, a piercing ache shooting through my chest. It was happening again. Gritting my teeth against the pain, I looked at Xuaningji and bowed low. I am merely a maid attending the princess of Shi. What skills could I possibly possess? I fear I must disappoint Miss Xue. Yet she still would not let me off. Princess Anping, seated above, chimed in as Xuaningji's close confidant. You now belong to the Prince of Xuanyang's household. To defy your master's wishes thus, do you wish to invite others to question the prince's household standards? Princess Anping finished and turned her gaze to Xia Huaijin. What does the Prince of Xuanyang think? Xia Huaijin's expression was complex. One was Zhuang Wanyi, who had spent 10 years in the Prince Shi's residence to clear the Xia family's name. The other was Xuaningji, the noble lady of high birth he was soon to marry. I shook my head gently at him, mouthing silently. Xia Huaijin, don't. Even though I had lost all hope in him, at this moment I still hoped he would protect me out of past affection. In the past, I had no choice. But now, I refused to lose my composure here. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Xia Huaijin averted his gaze and said gravely, since both the princess and Miss Liang insist, then dance. I stood rooted to the spot, as if plunged into an ice cellar. Xuaningji watched me with smug satisfaction as attendants led me away to change into a dancer's costume. She mentioned a dance called Lotus Steps, where the dancer must perform barefoot, without shoes or socks. Several maids pressed me down. I hastily changed into the costume and was shoved out. Oh dear, what's wrong with these maids? So careless. Poor Zhuang girl must suffer for it. Upon entering, I saw scattered porcelain shards on the floor. The drunken son of Minister Wang stood nearby, while Xia Huaijin pointed at me with a smirk. Truly, Prince Shi is blessed. Though Miss Zhuang's beauty is marred, she remains quite lovely. I hear there were hundreds like her in the Prince Shi's household. Xia Huijin's expression darkened slightly. He shot me an imperceptible glance before tipping his cup back and draining it in one gulp. I averted my eyes, maintaining a composed facade as I endured the piercing pain in my feet and the old wound in my chest. Step by step, I painfully began to dance. Suddenly, the young master slammed his cup down on the table with a heavy thud and let out a cold snort. What is this? Are you deliberately trying to deceive us? Cold sweat beaded on my forehead. One must never offend the privileged sons of nobles. Leaving the Prince Shi's residence felt like stepping from one cage into another. The young prince's shouts and curses, along with others' admonishing voices, echoed in my mind. I opened my mouth, but only felt a deep fog in my head. A surge of hatred rose from my heart. Finally, I could bear it no longer and fainted. When I awoke, I was back at the Prince of Xuanyang's residence. Xia Huijin summoned a physician to tend to the wounds on my feet. His voice was hoarse. You're awake. How do you feel? I closed my eyes, offering no reply. I refused the medicine and the food. Xia Huijin came for 2 consecutive days, yet I did not exchange a single word with him. Finally, he relented and called Bai Tan to keep me company. Only when I saw Bai Tan did I open my eyes. Her eyes were glistening with tears. Wani, don't sleep. Let me take you out to see them. The maid had asked Xia Huijin, and he had nodded in agreement. So Bai Tan led me to those small graves, and we paid our respects to each one. Perhaps no one remembers their names, but Wani, as long as we live, they live too. I gave a faint smile, wanting to comfort her, but suddenly the world spun, and I fainted. When I awoke again, Bai Tan's eyes were red-rimmed, and a physician sat beside her. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She must have already known. I no longer hid it, looking at her earnestly. Don't cry. Let's go to Jiangnan and open a sweet soup shop. 3 days remained until Xia Huijin's wedding. Bai Tan nodded. Back at the Shenyang prince's mansion, the maid hesitated, then timidly told me. Xia Huijin sent word, on the wedding day, he wants me to wait outside the chamber. This is his request. I froze in place. After a long moment, I murmured softly, all right. The story isn't over yet. Stay tuned for the second half. If you enjoyed it, please click to follow. Thank you for your support.